We've been talking all morning, just so much power, the youth, all of it. But then there's Vlad Guerrero Jr., which you didn't think he was going to be able to put on that performance if you've watched just the 8 home runs he put on in the first half of the season. But how impressive was he?
It was impressive. Obviously, he came here just to do that. So all his energy was for that. And it's showcasing the great young talent that we have in this game, which is mind-boggling. I still can't get my head around it. But what he did and how that thing played out, it actually hurt him for the chances to win it. It was a shame because he just was exhausted. How could you not be
semifinals against Jock, where it goes to overtime and then double overtime and then triple overtime, a double swing off, and ended up being 41-40.
I've never seen anything like that. And it was unbelievable.
John, you're one of the few people. You faced his dad 23 times. So break it down for me, his dad's swing and the swing that we saw last night, and project what kind of Major League Baseball player he has the potential to be.
Yeah. First of all, most people who've been projecting these youngsters have been right. They've not disappointed. But his dad was lanky. He was a bad ball hitter. If I had to go back and face him, I would throw things right down the middle. But he threw it up in his neck or down on the ground. He was able to get to it. He was lankier, and he was just an unbelievable hitter. This young man is going to be a more powerful hitter, I believe, and he's still, and like his dad, on a front foot hitter where he gets all his weight down and he generates such, you know, I want to say clubhead speed because I got golf on my mind, but it's bat speed. And I think the biggest thing is he's just prepared. I've never seen anything like it. You can't come to the big leagues at 20 and do what he did.
So when you say he's just prepared, what do you mean?
He grew up in the game is one thing, but the way that the youth play baseball today is kind of a positive and a negative. They're more prepared for the showcase games and this kind of event, but they're also bringing in more injuries, which we've seen. The injury factor is evident in baseball, but the youth and the readiness, there's no chance I could have been ready like some of these guys. I had to go through the development that fortunately I did to make me the player I am. They're ready now, and that has a lot to say for how they've been brought up.
You mentioned the influx of all this great young talent. I want to stay there for a moment because we see this in sports. You go through ebbs and flows over decades or so. In the NFL, for example, you had the great quarterback crop of 2004 draft and the few drafts before, and the quarterback play is still so high because those guys haven't retired and new young quarterbacks have come in. Baseball, I don't want to say it ever went through a talent drought, but over the last half decade, you now have a half dozen to a dozen guys who all have come into the league that look like, well, he could win an MVP, he could win an MVP. How exciting for you is that to have so many young players that weren't in the sport a decade ago that are now already dominating or close to dominating the sport?
It is, and my only wish, and it's the Pandora's box, is how do you give them the long career that we got to enjoy? Meaning, how do you keep them healthy with the pressure to get into the game as great as they are and as impactful as they've been? There's also the ability to, personality-wise, lose a few of those players for a year because there is so much expected of them. If you would expect me at 2021 to go dominate on the mound, I would have spent a lot more time in the minor leagues going, this league I'm not ready for it. So that is a credit to what baseball and talent and training and all the strength. These guys you can't grab their arm and go, oh, now I know. Now I know why you're hitting at 450 feet. They're more prepared for the moment, and the game philosophically has allowed them to be more prepared for that moment.
It's not just the young guys. Let's talk about a guy like Verlander at age 36. He's still going to be out here. How impressive is that?
You know, I tell, whenever I get a chance to speak, I say, if you're a young pitcher, if you don't study him, you're doing yourself a disservice because he's a guy who's evolved within the game of different philosophical changes, and he's learned how to preserve and use the talent he has. Most young guys come in the game today and they're firing it as much as they can, right? That's what they're asked to do, max effort. He learned how to change speeds, save some gears, throw 97 at the 9th inning instead of always coming out in the 1st inning. And he's learned with his, you know, mechanics and freakish
and
talent.
And some discipline also to be able to hold back and bring that out at the end. That's not easy to do.
He's been able to pitch through a situation where now he's been given credit to be able to do that. It's harder for a young pitcher to come up and trust that without having any innings under his belt or any experience or success. So if you're a young pitcher, look at him, ask him questions, because my desire when I played, and I'm sure when you played, I want to play as long as I can. I want to be as good as I can, as long as I can. And I was always asking questions to the people in front of me, and what did you do, and pick their brain and stuff.
And if they're not looking at Justin, you can look at Matt. Max, and his ability to be able to pitch at 34. We're seeing some of the best baseball. Him and I also share some, not only being Hall of Famers, we shared kind of the same physical therapist guy who helped us elongate our career.
Yep.
Do you think the younger players are still trying to aspire to play as long as someone like you play?
I don't think so, and I think the reason is because the way the game has evolved. It's you're in quicker, and you're asked to do a lot more, and they're training sport specific. There's that, again, that's that Pandora's box. They're greater, they're stronger, they're faster, they're hitting the ball farther, they're throwing it faster. But the question is going to be long term, is it giving them a longer career? And they may not need it. You know, that may be one of the things, too. The games have changed and how we're equating what success is in the game. It's kind of like in basketball. The reason there's more three-pointers is because they're shooting more three-pointers.
Right.
The reason there's more homers is because they're playing for the homer. And part of that philosophy and the ability to train an athlete differently. Look, I think you should have body fat to play this game. And if you don't have any body fat, you got more risk of injury, and because you're too tight.
Great
and
point.
This game is played in a whole different level than it is football, basketball, or baseball. It's a longevity. It's a marathon. And so a lot of the injuries I see today are based on the guys look so good.
Right.
And they're so physically fit. They don't have enough flexibility to last, I think, at times.
A lot of people think, to cross mixed metaphors, somewhat the injuries Tiger Woods suffered had to deal with when he got so rocked up, when he got so physically fit that his body wouldn't give as much. Let's talk bigger picture-wise. At the break, Major League Baseball, Fox, anyone involved in the game has to look at the standings and smile. It's like, oh, the best team in the American League plays in New York, and the best team in the National League plays in Los Angeles. This is, as far as nationwide interest, those are two pretty good teams to be headlining. Let's start with the team that we live real close to, Chris's favorite team, Jenna's team, the Yankees. The Yankees have been able to do it despite overwhelming injuries. 87 lineups in 88 games. How impressive has Aaron Boone been and their ability to deal with those injuries and still find themselves first place in the standings despite the Rays and Red Sox being really good teams?
Aaron Boone's done a great job. Brian Cashman deserves a lot of credit for not just assuming everything's going to go well, creating depth, creating an opportunity to give them flexibility when injuries happen. Listen, the Yankees are interesting because they're a much different team than what they were created to be. And what I mean by that is the home runs, everyone knows that they're going to hit home runs. But I think they're more equipped to make a deeper run because the strikeouts are being less and less. Like you can pitch to that lineup in the past, even as fearsome and as gaudy as they look at the plate, but they have flexibility for guys like LeMahieu. Torres is a totally different hitter. They've put together a roster that I guarantee you, they may not say it out loud. They're looking at the Houston Astros pitching rotation and saying, we got to beat them. Or the Boston Red Sox, defending champs, we got to beat their rotation. How do we do that? And you have to look at the teams that you haven't beaten. We went through it for 14 years, you know, of being there and almost coming up with championships and only having one. But I think the Yankees, by far, have done the most and may not be done to add a piece or not. Or
well,
two.
How far can they go if they don't add anything else? We know they probably could use another starter, maybe a middle reliever. But if they don't, how good is this team?
They're good enough to that the way the style of baseball. Now, bullpens have taken a hit because of the usage over the last couple of years. You see the overall ERA has been up, and guys are, you know, feeling that effect. But their bullpen is as good as anybody. So their philosophy is we're going to make it tough for a pitching staff to get through our lineup. We only need 4 or 5 innings out of our starter. And I think if they get enough length in the regular season, then that gap grows, then that bullpen doesn't get exhausted, and they can make the run all the way to the championship.
You've done a number of Yankees-Red Sox in the series, and that rivalry is special, one of the special ones that we have in baseball. But share with us the experience of going abroad, game in London, Yankees, Red Sox. We had the commissioner on. He talks about trying to grow the game, and you being a part of that telecast and that experience.
You know, totally cool. Knew it in the offseason when that date was going to come. Players embraced it. I thought they did an unbelievable job. Look, we're creatures of habit. It's a long season. You don't want anything to interrupt it per se because you're a creature of habit. But when you embrace it, know it far in advance, they were great. They said all the right things. They took it upon themselves. I can only imagine as a player going to London and making an opportunity like that play out. That was phenomenal. It was me as a broadcaster. It was phenomenal. I turned it into a vacation and went to Scotland afterwards. So I think
I've seen you travel though, and you got your golf clubs.
Always.
You and that pitching staff, man. Listen, forget the gloves, forget our uniform. Make sure our golf clubs are under the plane.
Listen,
you would have been playing golf in London.
Yeah, I did. And when I'm in the airport, I'm looking, did the clubs make it? Forget my suitcase. Did the clubs make it? So, yeah, it was a great experience. A little unfortunate, the score of the game, but that just happened when something's new, 17-13. To introduce the game over there, I don't want them to think that that's American
exactly
style baseball.
Indicative of what you're going to see every time.
But I think once players understand what's at stake and what can help promote the game that we all love, there's not going to be one of those what ifs, if we had only, because the schedule's brutal. You know it going in. So no need complaining about it. And it turned out, I think, fantastic.
And they have great accents, but that's neither here nor there. All right, we talked about the best team. We talked about the best pitcher. Far and away, the best player is Mike Trout, at least on offense. We talked so much about the power he has, how he stands out when you look at a team. How would you pitch to a guy like Mike Trout? It's the only thing we really haven't gotten to yet.
I think about it all the time. When I'm out on doing a game, I don't get a chance to do a ton of his games, but when I watch him and break down film, I'm like, man. This guy has taken away a weapon that he used to be vulnerable. He used to be able to. He was striking out. It was at the upper end of the pitch, the strike zone. Then you try to expand his eyes down. You try to get him away from the plate, but then he can take you opposite field. He doesn't have any wasted movement. And as a pitcher, you want guys with wasted movement. You want guys swinging for power to create it and somehow exposing their mechanics. He doesn't. It looks too comfortable. It looks Albert Pujols-like. I'm already starting to get fears of Albert Pujols in the day of St. Louis. So when I marvel at him, we do take him for granted, unfortunately, because he is so good. Like that he's reached a level where we go, that's normal.
Well, Pujols is the right example, right? In that if you look at, I will say this till the day I die, you can put the first 10 years of Albert Pujols' career against anybody. Any era, don't care, Ted Williams, pick the best first 10 years of Pujols, and he's still a good, I don't want to denigrate what he's done since then. But Trout now, he's going to have his 7th first or second place MVP finish through 8 seasons. And because you mentioned you don't do a lot of his games. Why? Well, because his team, unfortunately, hasn't been great. This is obviously not something you dealt with. Your teams were almost always outstanding, 14 straight divisions. How do you think tough that is for him? He obviously signed up for it. He signed long-term with them. But his level of excellence being so high, and the team has not been able to consistently build a contender commensurate with his talent.
I would first, I've never met his parents, but the first thing I would say to his parents, you did an incredible job. Because not everybody could do what Mike Trout's doing. He doesn't need to be out in the forefront. Everyone talks about, he should be more out there. He should be doing commercials. No, it's not. He's handled everything absolutely first class. As a competitor, as a guy who got a chance to do what you just mentioned, it drove me crazy to not win championships. I wanted to do whatever I could to win a championship. I wanted to compete at the highest level. I stayed, for the most part, 21 years in Atlanta. That was my personality. What I love about Mike Trout, he's doing what he gets to and he wants to do, and he has no regrets.
Can I follow up on that real quick? To the people who criticize or try to lessen his numbers, saying, well, yeah, but he's not doing it in high-leverage spots, and his team's not winning. How fair do you think that criticism is?
It's not. There is some randomness to baseball. I was fortunate to be in a situation where at the time that I wanted to perform the most, I got a chance to do it. And you can't just push a button on everybody, and there's what you don't. What you realize, what you don't know is what you don't know. And when Mike Trout gets an opportunity, and I hope that he gets an opportunity to have 20, 30, 40 at-bats, he's going to put up those same numbers. I promise you. It's the same thing as Randy Johnson when he was struggling early. He's going to dominate. It's an aberration that happened.
And it's not like he's in the NBA and he's playing on the Phoenix Suns, the Sacramento, and he's getting 25 points, where those numbers are reduced. I think that baseball does have that randomness to it, but we can't reduce his numbers because baseball, the game is played totally different.
And listen, I'm telling you, you can't handpick enough players. He can do whatever he wants. He could steal 60 bases if he wanted to. He could hit 60 homers. He's not doing things selfishly to just say, look at me. He's doing everything in his power to make his team, best version of that team. And I have the utmost respect for a guy, to your point, who would love to be in the World Series a few more times.
Got to ask you about tonight, your prediction and your prediction for MVP.
Yeah, I think for the first time I've come here now, this is my 4th All-Star game, but I've been able to do a bunch of All-Star games and watch them. It typically is what? A low-scoring game, a lot of high velocity. I think for the first time we might see some runs. I think the National League lineup, to me, I look at it and go, oh my gosh, that's the best National League lineup I remember from a statistical category of every position when Ronald Acuna Jr. is batting 9th.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
The American League's got a great lineup. Usually it's always maxed out with great lineups. I think the National League has a chance to end this winning streak of the American League, even though Max Scherzer's not pitching. We got 3 basically first ballot Hall of Fame pitchers pitching in this game. When you think of Kershaw and Verlander, and Max would have been one of those. But I think National League wins a game 7-4, and I think the MVP is going to be Christian Yelich.
All right.
Go. Very precise prediction.
Yeah, really.
I like that.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.